President Zelensky. Hey, I give him credit. He's very independent, tough leader. He speaks up and he's doing what and saying what he thinks is best. However, he doesn't hold all the cards in this one, and we'll come back to that one as I think most people would say ending the war is a good thing, but he may not love all the terms. But we'll see where it goes, and we'll come back to that. Hey, good morning. Where is this wind coming from? Just as it starts to die down today, J-Dog, we really start to see what west wind's still chilly out there. Chilly tonight. Friday, the winds are back. The only good solace I saw going into the weekend, coming out of Sunday and Monday, as we get back up into the 30s, near 40 for next Monday. That's a heat wave. But we've had some folks coming back from Florida the last few days. I've talked to in the morning. They're like, "Why did I come back?" I said, "I have no idea." But anyway, good morning. Good morning, New Hampshire, WTPL 107.7 FM, Seacoast of New Hampshire, up into Maine, WTSN AM and FM. Lakes region, we have you blanketed with WEMJ AM and FM and a brand new signal up there, 98.3 FM HD2. Everywhere else worldwide, New England worldwide. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Got a full show for you this morning, J-Dog, as we get going. By the way, that big, I think it's pretty big. USA-Canada hockey game tomorrow night in Boston. TD Garden will be at 8 o'clock drop. And Charlie McAvoy of the Bruins playing for Team US will not be playing, as you've heard. He's at Mass General for an upper body infection-related type situation from an injury. And what that means, hopefully he's okay. And he'll be out. But anyway, that's tomorrow night. As we get going in that Four Nation thing, we got a packed show for you. We're going to tell you a little bit about J-Dog, you walk a lot, even with the winds and cold. Have you noticed this year, more than like most in recent years, the visible ice dams off of homes and buildings, like the icicles? I'm sorry, not dams. I'll get back to that. But the icicles, wow. Some of these are like, yeah. It's funny you look at it that way. That's exactly what I was thinking the other day, taking a few off. They're like the old Viking swords, some of these. When these swords are uncovered today from the Vikings way back, these icicles. But speaking of that, Bob Jackman, Laval Middleton Building Supply, it's talking about those, but ice dams, because at the top of those icicles, there's water coming off the roof, freezing with these cold and the wind and ice dams. When do you know there's a problem in terms of the interior and the home, and what do you do about it? Bob Jackman coming up. I also get an update on the VA with our friends at Manchester VA. A little bit later on, the legal headlines and brand new segment on the show. Jeremy Rosenthal of Fox. I'm about the legal headlines of the weekend. There's been a lot of legal rulings in courts about the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, the cutting, the reviewing of federal agencies, and we'll get an update from him. And then a little bit later on, another business leader you should know, Tim Wade, M&T Bank, I believe will be in the 11 o'clock hour. Before I bring in our first contributor this morning on the political academic side in a few moments, I wanted to take a moment and elaborate on some of the headlines. I will say this, and I don't live in a bubble, and I do live in reality, and I do understand, I think, as well as many or most, what's going on. And I'm going to come back to what I think about the Defense Department once DOGE gets into that. And you're already seeing the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth looking at shrinking the ranks. A lot of jobs will be cut. The defense budget, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's closer to $900 billion, which is one of the biggest chunks in our taxpayer stuff, and the waste in there, the procurement process. But once we get into that, I think this week there was a total of how much Musk and his team have saved the American taxpayers. I think there's some articles in the last day or two that in 2025 or beginning of 2026, Americans could see the first stimulus check of its kind, maybe $5,000 or $6,000 per taxpayer. And what's different about this one, if this happens, I'm not saying it's going to, but there are news stories about it because Musk wants that to happen, return this money. It will be the first stimulus check, which is coming from savings from wasteful spending, not stimulus from more tax dollars, increasing our debt, $36 trillion. And you know what I'd like to see on this one, whenever we've done stimulus checks before, it's to those people who maybe don't pay taxes. Maybe it would be nice to give the taxpayers a break. It's their money with all these savings, these billions, tens of billions of dollars are probably going to get up to $1 trillion. They're going to find probably a trillion with a T. Unbelievable. That should be returned, I think. But what I want to say is, when I mentioned I don't live in a bubble, I am totally cognizant of a couple things. One is all these executive orders, all the fast and furious pace of this Trump administration just over a month. I understand, believe me, it's very hard for some people to keep up with. In fact, it's nearly impossible. And I'm not being a wise guy. It really is almost impossible to keep up with. It really is. And there's so much happening. You have Marco Rubio in Saudi Arabia trying to broker some early deals with Russia and Putin's folks to end the war in Ukraine, or at least get them to stand down, even if President Zelensky's an unhappy character because he's sort of in the back seat of this deal. Won't be the first time in history things like this have happened with the bigger powers, but I'll leave that aside for foreign policy. You got the Middle East stuff going on still, but the real stuff that's overwhelming is domestically. Just every day there's something in the news. It's very hard for anyone to keep up with it. And if you did not, and I'm being totally trying to be as sincere as I can be on this one, if you were not happy and you were very unhappy with the results of November 5th, then you're not going to like any of this. And you're not going to like it less in the next month or two. It's going to be like this, certainly in my opinion, the first 100 days until we get into the midterm window, which, believe it or not, is coming sooner than later. You're not going to like any of this. I mean, although, saving money for the American taxpayers is a pretty hard street or side of the street to fight on. I don't know what the upside there is. You may not like how it's being done. You may not like how fast it's being done, but the courts, for the most part, are upholding Doge's authority to look at, spending in the Department of Education, for example. Courts are, I don't know if one court's going to slow this down or not. There are a lot of cases out there. There's a lot of people upset and protesting. And again, I get it. But you just got to remember that a big part of November 5th, whether you like it or not, whether you hate it or not, was change. People wanted change. And I remember on election day, that day when it was an NBC exit polls, like 78%, however they do these exit polls, said that people, when they're voting, were voting for change. And I go, oh, that's not good news for Kamala Harris and Governor Walz, because they don't really represent change, do they? Or at least Harris, when she was the nominee, was never able to articulate how she would make change or change the course from the Biden-Harris 4 years. She was never able to make that case. Now, that's not a criticism, by the way. I think most people, Democrats included, including Jim Messina, who was recently on our Contact Politics podcast, he's Barack Obama's top political advisor, said that she just couldn't really articulate what her changes would be. Trump obviously was a change agent. He is a change agent. Elon Musk is a change agent. People want change. Change isn't easy. Change can be very difficult. Markets don't, economic money markets don't react well on change. No one likes change. But if anything needed change, I'm sorry, it's Washington, D.C. They needed change. They needed a complete makeover. They needed a huge haircut. And they needed a big shaking up, and they're getting it. And again, people in Washington don't like that. If you're a lobbyist, I'm just going to tell you the truth here. It's been this way for 30, 40, 50 years or longer. If you're a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., making $800,000-900,000 a year, and your clients are big pharma, maybe a wind farm or, subsidized energy, green, you have your practice down there. You don't want change. You like it just the way it is. You're a fat cat in Washington. You don't want change. You like it just the way it is. When you start cutting, when you start shaking up, including the healthcare system, and showing what a racket it is, Kennedy will show that. I've been talking about it for years on my show. When you start changing Washington and departments and agencies and questioning, are they efficient? Are they wasting taxpayer money? When you start exposing how many people 140 years old, still getting Social Security checks, who've been dead for 48 years. I mean, when you start looking at this stuff, and you say, okay, who is going to argue that this? Now, you could say, Jack, I wish it was slowing down. I wish it wasn't going as fast. But when you run a business, this is how you run a business. And obviously, These are business people doing it. And again, when Elizabeth Warren says, "Oh, but they're not, Elon Musk is not he's not elected." This is one of their lines, a threat to our democracy. Wait a minute, Senator. No one on your Senate staff is elected. Your legislative assistants and senior chiefs and your assistant chiefs, your deputies on your staff, Senator Warren, they're not elected and they're writing legislation that you vote on. They're writing it. You're not writing the laws. They're writing it. Half the members of Congress don't even read the laws before they vote on it. They rely on their leadership to say, this is how we want you to vote on HB, whatever. They don't read the laws. They didn't read the Affordable Care Act, 1,200 pages edited at midnight. They don't, these are all unelected people on the staff writing the laws. Musk isn't writing law. He's exposing federal waste, and he's going through pretty serious in his team. Wait till they get into the Defense Department and the Pentagon and they show the waste. And Americans are going to be better off for it, even if many people cannot stand watching it as it happens. Some commentary, 603-228-2080. We come back, we'll check in with one of our academic political contributors, Neil Levesque, St. Anselm College Institute of Politics. See if he's ever seen anything like this. I doubt it. A little bit later on, we'll talk about those ice dams forming on your roof. Bob Jackman, La Valley Middleton Building Supply. Hey, Alexa, Google, play the Pulse of NH. We'll tell you our poll question on X when we come back after this. All right, we are back. I just have to play this one. We do have the open mic still. If you have the app, the Pulse of an H, you'll just see the open mic, MIC for microphone. And this one I love on the veteran side. Good friend of ours in New Hampshire and Germany with his family, U.S. Air Force. Listen to this one, J Dog. This is a great, I'll get this one to Heath for a new promo.
Jack, it's the Kerrigans calling from Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. We listen to your show on the podcast. We love it. Thanks for all you do for our veterans, and we're looking forward to coming home soon. Thank you.
Well, Colonel, thank to you and your family and your wife who's still serving, and thank you for all you do, the Kerrigans. And I dare to say I can't wait to see your sons. They're going to be probably NBA size or NFL size next time I see them height wise. I still have their soldiers they gave me up on my monitor here on the wooden table that when they were younger, and you brought them into the studio. Neil Levesque, Institute of Politics. That's pretty cool. St. Anselm College. Listeners over in Germany. We have Helsinki, Finland listening on the app this morning. Good morning, Neil. St. Anselm College Executive Director. How are you, Institute of Politics? Neil, have you ever... I just tried to give some sincere commentary on all these changes every day. It's hard for someone, even if you do a talk show, to keep up with this. I know it's overwhelming on a lot of people to even, and you're in the academic community, to even keep track of a third of what's happening almost every 24 hours. A lot of people, unless you're in the university world and colleges, don't know about this. Can you amplify what the message was? Mm-hmm. Right. DEI stuff or DEI stuff with colleges, universities. A lot of these universities have hired like social governance deans, right? Mm-hmm. And you know why though? I'm just going to touch. A lot of people don't understand this. I have a brother-in-law who just retired from major corporate America as a Northeast regional manager. He was telling me about this for years. The DEI stuff for hiring was being crammed down their throats. They had no say in the matter. They were basically treated like parents at a school board meeting. They're being yelled at. If they hired the most qualified person, the most experienced qualified person, but it wasn't DEI certified, they were basically overrun, overruled all the time. Universities, schools, we were all this stuff was ran. And you know what happened? It went too far. It just went too far. And the people ramming it did this to themselves, believe it or not. But I'll leave that out there. Neil, this is not going to stop. Wait till the Musk and his team get into the Defense Department. They have a willing defense secretary who wants to make it more efficient. Eventually, if you're going to cut this much waste in Washington, and you can't say Elon Musk is not elected and doesn't have a right to do this because half these staffs in the U.S. Senate are not elected and they're writing legislation that members of Congress don't even read the laws they're voting on. So that's a moot point. At some point, it's hard to argue if you're a Democrat and you want to run in 26 or for president. It's hard to run against this stuff, isn't it? If a Democrat, I mean, what's your position here? You're right. Yep. Yeah. Up here, up in the Gulf of Maine or here. Yeah. 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 Yep. Right. And that could backfire. That could backfire going into the midterms, right? That could backfire, right? Right. 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 Right, but if you make Medicare with the aging population more difficult or put that, you're right, that could backfire. Neil, let me switch gears before I let you go. Um, it seems that the U.S. Senate race, because I asked one of our contributors yesterday, when will we start to hear what Democrats are starting to look to run for governor to challenge Kelly Ayotte in her first term? Because if there's any a term where she might be, and I'm not saying she's going to be vulnerable at all to a defeat at all. I'm not saying that, but a Democrat might look at that first race coming up, the first reelection, which, believe it or not, starts this spring or summer. But the U.S. Senate race is bigger than that nationally, and no one knows right now. I don't know. Maybe you do. If U.S. Senator Jeanne Shaheen is 100% going to run again or not run again. I'm not convinced she's made up that decision yet. I may be wrong. I think it's a personal family decision. She's got ranking positions on the foreign relations in the Senate, but she's in the minority and she doesn't like a lot of what the Trump administration is doing. So that could cut both ways. That could make her not want to stay in that environment or make her want to run again. But regardless, Scott Brown, a Republican who's been on my show a lot, he was on our Contact Politics podcast this week. He's definitely all but running. I mean, there's not even a hesitation in his answer. The question is, when does he kind of make it official? But he's out there. So that would be a big, huge race because we didn't have a U.S. Senate race this last time around. We had a presidential, but we didn't have and a governor's race wide open. We didn't have the U.S. Senate races are rare, as you know, and this one's coming up in 2026, but it really starts this spring or summer. I'm actually hearing that there might be another name out there on the Republican side. I don't know if you've heard this, but Phil Taub, who I know well and do a lot with in and out of the show with Swim of the Mission and veteran advocacy. I know there's some folks maybe even around the former governor, Chris Sununu, that have been talking to him about this. Have you heard that at all in terms of the interest on the Republican side to run, whether or not Jeanne Shaheen does or not? Have you heard that? Hmm. Right. Right. Right, right. Because all right, good stuff. And of course, Maggie Goodlander, representative on the show yesterday morning after touring the VA. Thank you, Neil. Institute of Politics, St. Anselm College. We'll catch you soon. Thank you, Neil. When we come back, we're going to update Friends of La Valley Middleton Building Supply on ice dams. Bob Jackman, a little bit later on, our Manchester VA talking medicine with their chief of their medical staff, Dr. Bob. Back in a moment. All right, we are back. Coming up, we will talk medicine with Dr. Bob at the VA and Julie Vos, the acting director, in a moment. But first, those icicles and ice dams. Let's go to the ice dams because the icicles are probably just more, I don't want to say they're cosmetic. Some of these are as big as a Viking sword. But ice dams, how do you know when you're getting structural damage in and out? Bob Jackman, Lavallo Middleton Building Supply. 'Tis the season, Bob. We are in a real New England winter. We're not through it yet. Good morning. How about 6 feet? Well, I'm seeing a ton of them driving around. I mean, these are not a foot or two. Some of these icicles are going from the second floor down to the snow. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I'm seeing several buildings at this point. It's hard to get up there in this wind and cold with a rake and do anything about it. I mean, what do you honestly versus letting it get warmer? What do you do? Right. Hmm. Yeah, like streams. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Well, again, I don't know what you could do at this point. I'm seeing a lot of this. This is the first winter I was staying to a buddy. I'm trying to think back. Don't hold me to it. The last time I feel like in the coast or this part of New England where I felt a winter like this, it has to be 5, 6 years ago where we had, February, March storms, a lot of ice, a lot of cold. This one's different because we've had the wind, the big winds, heavy winds, and the ice. And now I'm seeing a lot of the ice. There's not many homes I'm seeing, even with gutters, where I don't see some degree of what I call icicles or ice forming on the edge of the roof. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, this one is it's here. And once it's here, it's here. And sometimes, I don't know, I've been a homeowner more than I can count. And it just seems that sometimes I even am guilty of what you said earlier, Bob. I admit it years ago when I was younger and didn't think as much. I was up there with the axe on the corner trying to just get the ice broken up a little bit to create a stream, but not go through to the shingles. But you know how hard that is because once in a while it's gonna break open. You're gonna cut open your roof. But when you start seeing it inside and some water coming inside, then you got a big problem. Again, go to any one of your locations to talk more about this as well for any home maintenance thoughts and upkeep. Yeah, it always. Oh, I know. Water does. It's like when you're camping outdoors on a fishing or hunting trip and it rains that you get that nice tent and the sleeping bag. Water will find a way. Water finds its way. No way to stop it. All right, Bob. Anything else or best way to follow up? Right. The other thing I just want to mention that's on the safety side, and you know this, is I'm just going to say it. You don't have to get up on a ladder to fall right now. And the driveways, the walkways, just ice. You can take a header just walking out your door. But I will say, again, being more of a weekend warrior over the years, trying to do as much as you can yourself before you call the professional, be extremely careful if you're getting up on any ladder above the like we used to call it in ski patrol, the mechanism, the anything above your own height. Getting up there with bushes and shrubs and ice, and you get up there and you're trying to create a stream in these ice dams, and then you fall and really hurt yourself. Trust me, the interior damage from that what is far less than if you break a collarbone or do something worse right now. So just sometimes either cross your fingers or call a professional because you don't want to get up there, in my opinion, and try and become a roof expert yourself. Right. Yep. It's amazing the stuff we try and do in our house, electrical work and all that, and you're like, "Really?" And a lot of times, not to get into this, excuse me, I had a garage door issue, and it wasn't the motor, it was the keypad on in your garage. It was after actually that earthquake we had a few weeks ago. I don't know if that shook it. It was just, it's old, and it was a wiring issue, so I go online, everyone can go online these days, I change the battery, I'm trying to reprogram, I'm doing all that, I'm getting up on the ladder in the garage, I'm doing all this, and I finally said, for 50 or 75 bucks, I am gonna call a overhead garage door professional. The guy was there the next day, fixed it. He goes, "It wasn't the battery or you, it was the wiring. It was old, it was shot. The unit, you had to get a new keypad." I mean, no big deal, but it's funny the stuff we try and MacGyver ourselves and end up having to call the professionals anyway to fix what we did. Yep, yep, yep. Yep. And we don't think of the garage stuff and all that, but everything is at La Valley Middleton Building Supply. Thank you, Bob. We got to run. Have a good one. Watch those icicles. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk medicine. Our friends at the VA next. All right. All right. Welcome back. Yesterday, we had Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander call in after she had just toured and visited with the team at the Manchester VA. We had a great conversation. Representative, 2nd Congressional District on my show. And today we have the acting director of the whole VA here, Julie Vose, with I call him Dr. Bob, head of the medical staff, talking medicine. Good morning, Julie. Thanks for updating us. This is a fun one. Anything with Dr. Bob is good. I'm a big fan of his. Yeah. Well, I think it's great because it's natural, and I think it's an open format as much as you can with these technologies. It's more interactive, and I'm thinking, Julie, it's a great way to just what people, you know what they say, Dr. Bob and Julie, the acting director. There's no stupid question, right? If it's important to you, it's not a bad question. So you might be talking pain management, but they might say the flu's been going around. Can I just ask? There's always a good question, and I imagine if the person presenting doesn't have the answer, you get back to the veteran, right? Yeah. And when is this next one, Dr. Bob? Coming up. All right. Well, we'll remind people. And Julie, just from the overall point of view, as I mentioned, Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander calling in yesterday, she was very upbeat. She praised you and your team, which I think is neat. But in general, one of the things she said in her staff release from Congress was, "Are we up? What are we? What are you up to now? For how many sort of veterans in the VA system here locally?" The number was pretty good, I thought. And I imagine one of the rising areas for veterans and signing up for care and support and services, which by the way they earned, um, are women veterans. How are you doing with the Women's Health Center? What's the I remember that was coming online, and maybe Dr. Bobby, you can just touch upon that. Great stuff. Go ahead, Bob. Good stuff. Thank you, Dr. Bob. Thank you, Julie. Always a great update. This was a good one. Coming up March 11th, another Talk Medicine. Thank you so much. All right, take a quick thank you. Take a quick break. Flu's going around. I don't know if you've heard that, J Dog. I think it's type A. That's what I'm hearing from families. It was like, especially families with kids that may go to the school, like a daycare type situation. You know how quickly things will pass, or within a family. But what I heard, first it was the stomach bug was about a month ago. That was going everywhere, and then flu. Type A is what I'm being told, more than we've had. And I'm not going to get into it right now. That tells me that the flu shot, which is always a bet for efficacy on they kind of guess what the flu strain will be. If we're having, I saw something like 15,000, if we're having this many flu type A cases. I don't think unfortunately, the flu shot might not have been in that strain, but it seems like a lot of people are getting that respiratory, cold, fever, body aches, classic flu. Just stay away from, stay home and get better. Stay home and get better. All right, back in a moment. The Pulse of NH.